Hi, kitty cats. I am Amethyst Herrick, your hostess for Gender Identity Weekly, a weekly discussion about identity and gender from the contributors and guests of the Purple Pot Publications website, genderidentitytoday.com. This content right here is brought to you by subscribers of genderidentitytoday.com. If you're already a subscriber, first of all, thank you so much for your ongoing support. You know pretty dang well that subscribers not only receive new content directly to their inboxes as soon as it publishes, but are also able to interact with every contributor directly. And that includes me, which who would not want to interact with me, right? So, if you would like to support shows just like this one, as well as other podcasts, videos, and written articles by our contributors, please consider subscribing using the links you're going to find in the show notes. So I am very, very excited to be speaking with Katharine Lazaruk. Hi, Katharine.
Hello.
Katharine is a professional presence expert and also an author. Her most recent book is called Executive Being, Humanizing Business One Leader at a Time. This was published very recently. I see it was it was just in September, 26 September 2024.
Yeah, it's very recent.
It is. It's very exciting too. I was looking at I was looking at it. It is very exciting. So I wanted to talk to Katharine. There is a very common misunderstanding, in my opinion, that gender is only a matter of performance. And so, Katharine, your work as a professional presence expert, I really want to understand, how we end up remaining true to ourselves. And of course, gender transitions, an aspect of what I do and what I've done. So I thought it would be a super interesting conversation. So let me start from, the way back. I love hearing origin stories. This always cracks me up. Somewhere out there, young Katharine, and kindergarten Katharine, the KK.
Don't put the third day on, please. That would be bad.
No. It would be Queen Katharine in kindergarten, so QKK.
There you go.
Does that work? Okay.
Sure. I'll take it.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good thing your name wasn't Carl or something, because then it would be King Carl. Never mind.
No.
So, but it's where did you end up developing an interest in how image, is portrayed out from us and presence, especially presence? How did you develop an interest in that?
It was totally a download, actually, when I was an adult. So as a young child, I was much more artistic, very arty, very out there, loved to sing, loved to dance, loved to paint, loved to draw, loved to do all those things. And when it came time to choose a career, I really wanted to sing in the opera. But my parents are incredibly practical people. And after I did my music degree, they're like, yeah, get a real job now.
Oh.
So I went into education and got my teaching degree. And then I spent 12 years in misery of the acutest kind, trying to figure it out. And I ended up with a lung tumor. And it was like, okay, my husband's like, these jobs are suffocating you. Like, you need to leave. And so I had no plan. I had tenure. I mean, I would have had to kill somebody to get fired. But I was like, I can't stay. So I went on medical leave and then I just quit. And in the in-between time, I was like, okay, I need to focus on my health, obviously, because lung tumor, not great. And 6 months after that, the lung tumor was gone, and I had a job doing corporate training at PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is one of the big 5 professional services firms in the world. And in the in-between time, I realized I have quite a strong belief in the mind-body connection. And when I was diagnosed with a lung tumor, I'm like, okay, I know exactly what this is. I was so miserable in my work that I wished something would kill me. So here it is, presenting itself, and they don't know what it is and they don't know what's happening. So we're just in a waiting period to see, is it going to shrink? Is it going to grow? Is it going to, they don't know. And so the entire time of that 6 months, I was strictly focused on, okay, I don't need this lung tumor. I am already free. I'm already free. I don't need to die to be free. And so then when I went to my follow-up appointment, the first follow-up appointment, they're like, okay, it's shrinking, so we're not sure, so we're just going to wait again. And then it was gone. And the radiologist was quite funny because he looked at the films. There were still films in those days. And he went out and he talked to his assistant. He's like, are these the right films? Like, what's going on? And he's like, it's gone. And I went, I know, because I just didn't need that anymore. So I was very lucky. to have had that experience. And then in terms of the in-between time, I was also working with a coach. This is the first time that I'd worked with a coach. And I literally had this weird download. I was sitting across the desk from him and he said, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up, little lady?" Yeah, he was that kind of macho dude. And
Really? Is a business coach? That's what he did. He was
he's a sales coach, actually. He's a sales coach, and he's a good guy, but he's definitely very like alpha dude, rough around. He's a man, he's that kind of guy. But he knew enough to ask the question, and I literally had this download, which was like this Times New Roman font, silver lettering, purple background. It was really weirdly specific. And the first company name I ever used, which was ICU Image Consulting, like it said ICU in a circle, and then it said Image Consulting underneath it. And then the first tagline that I ever used, which was intensive care for your image. And I literally just got all that. It was like in my brain, and I started to laugh my ass off because I was like, "What? Like, that's not a real job. Like, who does that job? Image consulting? What even is that?" And he said to me, "That is a real job and you could do that job." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I don't know." And I thought, well, there's no regulation in my industry at all. Like, you could literally hang your shingle out tomorrow and say I'm an image consultant and nobody would blink. Like, it's completely Wild West. Anyway, so at the time, this is in 2009 or 2006, 7, somewhere around there. I said, okay, I look all right. I've read some books and I'll get a website and I'll just start practicing. So that's what I did. And I built my business around the edges of my corporate work. And when the recession hit and I was divinely ejected from my corporate job, I thought, great, I'll just go full time in my image consulting business. And that was when because I already knew that I liked it and I knew that I could make a difference doing this kind of work. And that was when I then went to Toronto and I got my certifications in image consulting and advanced image consulting from the International Image Institute there. And then I got my international level designation from our professional association, our global association, and just went on from there. And then as my clients went up the chain in their companies, they said, "Look, we want you to come work with our executive teams, but we're tired of explaining to the folks that write the checks that you're not really an image consultant. Like, you're doing more than that. You're helping us explore who we are. You're helping us have difficult conversations. You're opening up all these different avenues of thought for us. So you need to change your business." And I'm like, okay, all right, I'll change it to Lazaruk Consulting. And now I can do what I like. I'm not limited by labels.
So then, okay, gosh, then I need to take a step back. Tell me, what is image consulting and how does that differ from what you do today?
So the difference
or
is
what you've done.
Yeah. So image consulting, when I started, it's straight appearance behavior communication. So it's the way somebody looks, the way they act, and then how they speak about themselves, how they show up in the world. So that piece still falls under the umbrella of professional presence in my world. But what I added to it, because I was always taking an inside out approach to the work that I was doing, because I really couldn't care less about fashion. I hate shopping, which makes me a real outlier in my business, in my industry. I don't care. I don't care. What I care about is who are you and how do you want to show up in the world? And my belief is that image is surface, but it is never superficial.
Okay.
So I'm just going to say it again in case your listeners missed it. Image is surface, but it is not superficial. Everything that you show up as, everything about your presence and your being needs to be reflected by what you put on your body and the way that you behave. And it needs to be in alignment. And so I was always much more interested in the psychology and the psychological impact and the impact in the world that you could have as someone who was 100% aligned with who they were and what they were meant to do here on the planet. And so that was the lever that I like to pull on, is what you're doing for your self-expression.
Can I let me try to summarize so that I make sure that I understand this.
Sure.
Because part of what I hear, and so correct me if I'm wrong, image consulting would be at least somewhat about how best to express a social norm, social norms, so that you're perceived well?
For some people, yes. So when I think about image, I think about my 3 C's. So I think about the first one is character. Who are you as a person? Because I don't think that we change much. I think who you are at 4 is who you are at 104. In essence, you are the same person. Your I am Same. So you want to think about who you are as a person, and then you need to think about congruence. So the piece you're talking about is congruence, which is, okay, what's the context? We don't live in a vacuum. What's the context I'm operating in? What is it that I want to do in the world? How do I feel about what I'm doing in the world? What are the social norms? What are the geographical norms? What are the cultural norms? What are the industrial norms? What do people expect of me? And then the last C is choice. You always get to choose. How much do I want to conform to those norms? Do they feel good to me? And how much do I not want to conform to those norms? And then have the resultant, the results that follow from both of those choices. So I'll give you an example. I have a client who is a lawyer who knew that she wanted to be a lawyer when she was 8 years old. That has been her path. Lawyer, school, law school, partner, loves her life. Lawyer. And she loves everything about it. She loves the suits. She loves the shoes. She loves the robes. She loves the bag. She loves the office. She loves everything about being a lawyer. And the work, right? She does amazing, amazing work. But she loves it. And so she is someone who really wants to wear the black suit and the gray suit and the blue suit and she just loves it, right? Then I have another client who was a voluntold client, which never really goes very well, but the conversations are always interesting. And she, at the time, was an MBA student and was having difficulty meshing with her class. And she is someone who does not at all conform with the business expectations in any way. She dyes her hair blonde. She wears blue contacts. She loves to wear very provocative, body-conscious clothing, lots of color, lots of sparkle. She loves it. She loves that, the sort of stereotypical blonde bimbo look. She just loves it. And as we were having the discussions, I said, you have a choice. If you're not really getting along in this environment, you can choose. I said, you don't have to necessarily hit people over the head with a sledgehammer about how different you are. You don't have to do that. But it's your choice, right? And she said, I would rather go find an environment where people accept me as I am. And I'm like, fantastic. Then do that. Like, don't worry about what the norms say if you don't want to follow those norms. Like, just don't worry about it. And if you're going to be a challenger in that way, then you can't be upset when people are challenged.
Sure.
You have to accept that there might be a certain pushback or a certain whatever, but ultimately you're going to find your people anyway. So you might as well enjoy who you are and be who you are. And she is remembered all the time. And she loves the effect of looking the way she does and then pulling out the fact. I think she's got 2 PhDs. He's like, she's brilliant. She's the most amazing person. The most amazing person. And so I was like, great. So I went back to the people who hired me and I'm like, yeah, she's made her choice. Like, we're not going to work together anymore because this conversation was enough. She's clear.
Sure.
If she's clear and she's fine with the choice, then that's it. But then it's like, then come to a place of acceptance that these people that you're trying to mesh with are not your people. And that's okay.
Right.
It's okay that they're not.
So I think that does, because I don't, we get told, at least in some way, that what we should do is conform to social expectations.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not dumping on Judith Butler here. I will say the idea of,
Sorry,
wait, what?
I just laughed. Go ahead. No, continue, please. Not dumping on Judith. Go.
Well, because their big point is gender is a performance. And the social construct comes from performing social norms.
Right.
And so, the thing is that my opinion on that, like, you can't just do that. If you only perform, you feel like shit on toast. And
because you're wearing a mask. It's exhausting.
Yes. Oh, exactly. Oh, yeah. It's one big performance. You're walking around like Johnny Depp all day, and maybe that's good or bad. I don't know, but
I think some people perform all the time,
whether
they're performing heteronormativity or they're performing queer beauty. Agreed. There are people who are performing all the time. And some people, that's who they are. So good for them. But other people a lot of people that I work with come into my world and then they're like, oh, I'm in the wrong job, or I'm
Yeah.
a different gender, or I'm not fulfilling what I'm supposed to be doing here on the earth, or I'm not looking the way I really am. I'm not in alignment. I'm wearing a mask somewhere.
Yeah.
And my work is about stripping all that away and saying, okay, let's look at who you are before somebody told you who you were. And let's look at everything that surrounds you. So all of your environment, all the conditioning and things that you grew up with. And then let's talk about where you want to go next. And some people have more choice than others. Right? But I don't necessarily agree that gender is a performance. I think that everything that we do, if you're working towards authentic alignment, is something that's deep within you.
Yes. No, I totally agree. That being said, you hear I'm actually agreeing with you still. You hear every company, right? They go, "Oh, we value authenticity."
No, they don't.
Come. No, they don't.
No, they don't. That's what my whole book is about. This whole book is about that. I'm like, what can you do to bring your whole self to the table, and how, more importantly, do you prepare the table for people to be there as their whole selves?
Right.
That's my work.
And which is great work, because you get companies, they're like, we want you to bring your whole self to work, and then you do, and they go, whoa, hang on. Little too much authenticity, okay?
Too much. No.
Scale back the authenticity.
Right.
A quote from your website, which is a brilliant quote, because I had sort of heard this and I thought, truth? Right. So it says 15% of your success is based on your skill set.
Yes.
And 85% is based on the way you show up.
Yeah.
Show up is going to be context sensitive, right? It's going to be context specific.
Absolutely.
So from that, what does authenticity end up meaning in our society? What's it even mean?
What does it even mean? I tell people, I'm like, get real. Just get real. Get real with who you are. Get real with what you want. Get real with who you are in the world, and make sure that you are acting in alignment with those choices. Because you can also someone to be like, oh, they're so authentic, but they're actually scripting everything, or they're so authentic. Like, I think there's a sense of, unless someone is an extraordinary actor, you can usually smell it when they're bullshitting you. Right?
Yeah.
And when you meet someone, if they're pure of heart and their intention is pure and they're with you, then they're with you. And I'm not talking about authenticity as an excuse to just display everything. Like, there is some degree of privacy.
Sure.
There's a line between, because I think there is something that is like a self-abandonment if you're putting everything out there all the time, everywhere. It can be cathartic for you, which is great. Yeah. And it can be really good for other people to see that you're this vulnerable person. And it's a balance. So I think when you say, what is authenticity? To me, it's, who are you? What container did you come here in? What are you supposed to do? Because everyone's here for a reason, I think. Mm-hmm. And I also think that whatever container, your body, your face, whatever container you came here in the planet, is the container that is the perfect container to do whatever you're meant to do on the world. Whether you change your container or not. Because like if you are trans, you're like, oh, I need to shift this container so it fits better with who I am. I'm like, great. Then that's part of the journey. That is part of the path. That's not a deviance from the path. That's not I'm not being who I really am. It's like, no. Like, even Michelangelo chipped away all the things that weren't the David. Right?
Yes.
So that's what I think. But I do think that if you can make friends with your container, your life is going to be a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yep. I also think, too, the 85% basis, so 85% you showing up.
It's your presence.
But showing up also, that could mean, like you were saying before, with the your blonde bimbo friend. I didn't
Oh,
get
yeah.
a name. And
I shouldn't say bimbo. She's not. She's brilliant. And I
no,
wouldn't,
I know.
but I'm just giving you an example. Yeah.
Right. Oh, excuse me. Actually, multiple doctor blonde bimbo. Sorry, I should have said doctor blonde bimbo.
Highly educated, really cool woman.
Right.
Loves to dye her hair blonde and wear high heels and skin tight clothes. Fantastic.
But she ended up changing where she showed up, because how you show up is also dependent upon where. Okay.
She changed the environment. And the thing about that is you will sometimes have to spend more time explaining who you are.
Mm.
And that you can do that. That's fine. You just need to be in places where they're willing to listen.
Yeah. Yes. That's a good point.
Right. And I think for me that the most interesting thing about all of this change to this leadership model, like the leadership model used to be hierarchical, authoritative, compartmentalized. What was at work stayed at work, what was at home stayed at home. It's very, and you could rely on your positional authority to get things done.
Sure.
And so that's leaders that are over 40, 50, anyone in that age bracket, and some younger leaders who have been conditioned into that thinking. But now the leadership model is integrated, relational, and whole. So that means you as a person need to be integrated, balanced in all of your facets as much as possible. You need to be building relationships wherever you go. You can't just rely on your authority, because that's not how it works anymore. And whole, as in whole person, and to be as whole an expression of yourself as you possibly can be. And so I'm seeing my senior leaders, some of them, not all of them, some of them. And I remember with this one guy, he's, older white male, and he's sitting in my office, like angry. He's like, oh, why can't they just come to work and do the work and pay them and go home?
Sure.
Like, because that's not how it works now. And they don't need to change. You need to change. The structures need to change. The sandbox needs to change. And it's very confrontational work. It's super confronting to be someone who's at the top of the chain, who has worked with these principles their entire life and been successful in that system with these principles, to suddenly go, nothing I do is working. I'm not able to talk to the people that are working with me now. I'm not getting the same respect that I used to get. What is happening? Like, that is a huge shift in cognitive dissonance. So I have quite a lot of compassion for the old guard, my very experienced leaders who are not getting the results that they used to get with the same tactics that they used to use.
Yeah. Human nature, though, didn't change, right? I mean, over the course of, I'm sorry, I think I spoke over you. Human nature didn't change, right? I mean,
I don't know. Because that same question is, what is human nature? Is also similar to what is authentic, right? What kind of, what is, like, okay, if I think about human nature is all things. Just like divinity, whatever, like quantum physics are all things, everything, everywhere, all at once. So human nature is all things, and human nature is shaped by the world that we live in. So my belief and sincere desire, and possibly completely naive optimism, is that human nature is to be loving, is to be connected, is to be with one another, to be cared for, to be loved. That is human nature. That is who we are. That's who we came. We came here to be connected to the land. We came here to be connected to each other. We came here to be connected to the planet, etc., to the universe, whatever. We're supposed to be a connected species.
Yeah.
But I think against nature is what's happening.
Okay.
So if you want to say, like, what's human nature? I think human nature is changed by the forces that are exerted upon it when we are not aware of who we really are. We're all about we're animals. Right? So we should be moving in cycles the same way as animals do, and we don't. It's weird. It's weird. Totally weird. It's completely disconnected from reality.
It is weird. And what's funny is if you do that, because like I almost always know, like, when the last full moon or dark moon was.
Absolutely.
Which was last Friday, by the way. And people go, why do you know that? And I'm like,
it's Taurus full moon on Friday. Very, very good.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, I know.
So it was, anyway, I guess my point is, like, people think that's weird. Why would you do that kind of thing? And it's like, well, because that's what humans do. We are part of the cycle of everything.
We are.
So I love that. I'm going to revise my question. Oh,
okay,
go ahead. Sorry.
so the whole thing about that's weird, someone told you to think that.
Mm-hmm.
Someone told you to think it was
Oh,
weird
yeah.
to be aligned with the moon, but it's totally normal to be aligned with the moon, particularly if you're in a body that ovulates, right?
There's
But the
that.
moon is there for everybody. Doesn't really matter your
Yeah.
gender. The moon is there for everybody, and the cycles are there for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of the current power structure, all of that knowledge was lost, was deliberate, not even lost. It was deliberately and violently ripped away from us as a human species.
Agreed.
Right? Stamped out. So that's the only reason why you think it's weird, because someone told you to think it was weird.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know. But people, if you ask somebody, what's the, no, I figured, but, but sometimes people believe paganism just means not Christian, not like white patriarchal Western Christianity.
Well, yes. And sure, it's not that, but it's also 10,000 other things.
Right. Well, okay. Good point. So let me revise my question, because my question was going to be, because in the 60s, that was cool. Well, I don't know if it was cool, but in the 60s, maybe 70s, 80s, for sure, this very hierarchical, going to rely on my position for authority was accepted, and it worked, for lack of a better way.
Yeah.
Encouraged even. Yes.
Encouraged.
So what has changed if it wasn't how we are, how humans are? See, I changed my question. What changed? Is it our perception? Is it all this woke bullshit from the kids? What is it?
I love the kids. I love their woke bullshit. It's great.
Half of the woke bullshit I peddle. So I mean, it's
love it. I'm down with it.
I'm not a kid.
What changed? I think what changed is that people are beginning to realize that the path they have been pursuing is not the path. The prize is not the prize anymore.
Okay.
Because there are far too many people, and I have met many of them, who have done all the right things, quote unquote, done all the right things, showed up in all the right ways, achieved high levels of material success, and they are deeply, desperately unhappy. Yep. They don't know who they are. They don't know why they're doing what they're doing. They did it because someone told them to, their society, whatever, told them to, their family told them to, and they're desperately unhappy. And I think people are going, wait a minute, well, I don't want that for me. So we need to do something differently. And I think, now that this sort of cult of individualism has run rampant and swung so far over that nobody can have anything because a couple people are hoarding everything, people are starting to get mad. And I think that's what's changing. Because people are like, wait a minute. Just because you were born into this family, or just because you have this title, or just because whatever, does not mean that you get to run around and cause harm to other people. I think morality is flattening. I heard this really great, I wish I could remember her name, but there's a woman on TikTok that was talking about the difference between horizontal morality versus vertical morality.
Okay.
And I think what's changing is everything is flattening. Everything's going back to a more egalitarian, well, trying to. I think what we're seeing now in the political climate is just the last, I hope the last gasp, or the death throes of this idea of this full individualism, full oligarch, all this stuff is the last gasp. And people are starting to go, wait a minute, this is a bunch of crap. We are all equal. And if you're going to say that we're all equal, then you better start acting like that is true.
Sure. There are two places I want to follow up.
Sure.
The first one, so early on in my writing career, 2 years now worth of my writing career, but early on I wrote, hey, take your victories where they are. Mm-hmm. But I wrote an article that I called The Reflection, because I thought that the way I thought of needing to transition gender was you looked in the mirror and literally the reflection you saw, what you portrayed to the world was not the person you knew inside, that you knew you were inside. Is that part of what you're talking about there?
Yeah. Do you mean getting in alignment or figuring out who? Yeah. If you look at yourself in the mirror and you don't know who you are, that's a problem. Or you don't like who you are.
And I think that's the source of that pain and midlife crises. I think it's the source of a lot of things that you go, what the hell am I doing? Because that's not the person I am.
Yeah. Like whoever,
So
and it doesn't matter when you come to it. Some people come to it early and some people come to it late.
sure.
And some people
Yeah.
never come to it and they just die
Yeah.
miserable. So I'm like, okay, if you don't want to die miserable, you better do something about it. Right?
Right.
Whatever you came
Yeah.
into the world with and whatever you endured as a child, none of that was your fault. But whatever trauma or whatever stuff that you have brought with you, it's for sure your responsibility now to heal it and move
Yeah.
on. Like not
Yeah.
move on, move through, process, become who you were, shake off those shackles, whatever. If you
Yeah.
live your whole life and do nothing about it and you just die miserable, well, joke's on you, I guess.
Oh, I mean, good point. But
Why?
yeah,
Why die miserable? Be happy.
it's a good question. But that actually is a good segue into the second point I wanted to follow up. It is interesting that we look at this as rampant individualism. It is rampant individualism now to conform to social norms. Does that sound
Hang on. Sorry, say that again.
well? It's like, wouldn't it? Individualism should respect the individual, that each of us is different.
Yes.
And yet Western society highly prizes that you do exactly what Western society says you ought to do.
Totally. Okay, hang on. So there's a couple of things in there. So Western societies are highly individualistic for the most part, and they do value the individual. But what's happening now is people don't understand, like there has been for a long time a collective way of being. Oh, if you're going to be a banker, you got to behave like this. If you're going to be a Reiki practitioner, you got to behave like this. Right?
Yeah.
There's a way of being. But what's happening now is because of this flattening across the board of morality and hierarchy and everything else, the individual is accelerating, but also now the collective has not caught up yet. The collective hasn't caught up to, okay, well, if we don't have these structures, then what will the new structures be?
Well,
Because humans do like to feel safe and they do like structure, and structure is a valuable thing to have. But who makes the structure, who benefits from the structure, and what is the structure that we're like, what is it that we're operating in? So I think now it's like, so I think what we've seen is we've got this huge swing towards individualism. Like when I say individualism, I don't mean individual expression. I mean like, I can take care of myself and I've got mine and screw you. That's what I mean.
Yes.
We've swung there.
Oh,
right.
Right. Well, and sorry, go ahead, finish up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when I say it's gone too far to the individual side, we've forgotten the collective. We've forgotten we're actually a collective species.
Sure. Oh, and I agree.
Other cultures, like other tribal cultures, and they found a footprint on an island in Ireland that's 13,500 years old. Like we're like this much. We're like a tiny amount right now in this existence that we're in. But we've forgotten, I think, how it used to be that people could be very, very different and still honor each other within that structure.
Yeah. Right.
I think what happened is we went to this super conformist place, and then individualism was like, oh, you have to be a certain way in society. And now it's like, wait a minute, I'm going to be who I am. And the culture's not caught up to this honoring place of, oh, everybody's actually really different. We have a lot in common. Yes. Like they focus, like it's this fracturing now because everyone's like, we're so different, but actually we're not. We just haven't found our way back yet to how do we run this collective?
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I mean, I agree with you because I think what we see is not individualism so much as, I don't even know what to call it, because an individual is always part of a whole.
Right.
And so really, if we were going to honor the individual, you have to look at the context of that person. You have to look at the whole. And ultimately, this plays into, all the work that you do, that you have to integrate yourself as a person, which includes everything around you. So it is, because to me, like, that is individualism. That is saying, I respect you as an individual and I will meet you where you are. Rather than say, you need to be, I'm going to put you in this box.
Yeah.
And it's not a big box.
No, some of the boxes are really small. And some people love the boxes. I'm like, great, then be in the box. If you want to be out of the box, then here's some of the conditions that come with being out of the box.
There's safety in the box. I mean,
totally. That's why people don't grow. That's why they don't want to stay inside, because it's too hard. It's too hard. If from years and years of personal growth, it is gut-wrenching to go through, and it's like, okay, I'm going to feel every feeling. I am going to resolve every grief. I am going to allow all of this backlog that I've built up over however many years to flow through me so that I can be free of it. So I can be light. I can move into whatever, I can hear the messages I'm supposed to hear. I can hold everything I'm supposed to hold. I can do everything I'm supposed to do. But I got to clear the trash out first.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And it's hard work. It's bloody hard work. So I fully understand. Like if someone's like, yeah, I've reached my growth limit. I don't want to grow. I'm like, okay. Then you're not coming with me, but okay, enjoy. Right?
It's safety. I mean,
Absolutely safety.
A lot of, because there are like two major, that's four fingers, but run with me on this. That there are two major parts, at least in my own theory of identity, and presumably, you haven't read all of my articles. This is just a dumb guess, but I'm guessing probably haven't read 170 or whatever that I've written. But in my theory of identity, you have that part of you that doesn't change. You had said we're pretty much the same person. Yeah. Yes, I am. Yes, I call it the origin of identity. No real different. Because I'm a scientist and we always suck at nomenclature. I mean,
I heard a story about gorilla. There's like a gorilla, that species is gorilla and its genus is gorilla, and it's also called gorilla. Anyway,
sure.
That's not confusing at all.
It's what scientists do. It's like, well, here's this one thing, and it seems like something extremely convoluted sounding, so we're just going to call it that. And somebody like a poet comes along and goes, well, why don't you just call it like blue?
Yeah.
And the scientists go,
what?
Shit. Well, this is why you're the poet. Yeah. Okay.
Poets synthesize feelings. That's why.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have the origin of identity. Now that we've dumped on scientists, sorry everybody who's a scientist out there, including me. See, we hesitated to dump on Judith Butler, but scientists,
no problem.
Fuckers had it coming.
You're going to punch up anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, well, I am a scientist, so it's okay, right? So
we have to poke fun at ourselves.
Oh yeah. So you have your origin of identity, which is a core set of knowledge that doesn't change, but you still have to express that within your social environment. Exactly. And that expression feeds so much, safety feeds most of that, informs most of that. And so some people, the social expectations will say, here's your box. And people go, that's fine. I'll climb into it.
Great.
Yeah.
And some people
didn't.
Me neither.
Yeah, I didn't.
Me neither. The first time I ran away from home, I was 3.
3?
Yeah, I'm out. Right?
You might have beaten me by a year or two, but not by much. So
my mother told me the story actually. Like a neighbor knocked on the door and was like, "Is this your child?" She's like, "Yes." And he goes, "She was out on the highway." Like this was probably more than just about 3/4 of a mile, maybe a mile away from my home. I had just run out of the gate. I'm like, I'm out. Yep. Start trucking down the road because that's who I am. I'm a seeker. I'm out there. So.
And what's great is in the 1970s and 1980s, like parents didn't even know. I don't think they cared.
They don't know where you are. It doesn't matter. My mother had a referee's whistle that she would blow. She would blow. If we had to come back, she would blow this really loud hockey referee's whistle, and that was when we had to come back. Or if it was dark, come back at dark.
That was mostly what I got too. It was like, just come back at dark. Where'd you go? No, don't tell me. Actually, you're Gen X and I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care where you are. I just care that you're not there. Right.
You're more or less made at home. Oh, you're missing an arm. That's a bummer. We'll put a little butter on that. She'll be fine. It's okay.
Totally.
Right. All right. So let's actually talk. I can't even believe that we've talked this much. We have, because let me try this again. Wow. One of the slogans that I saw, whole person, whole presence.
Yes.
What's that mean? What does that mean?
Okay.
Period.
So I coined that for, in order to, you cannot be perfectly wholly present anywhere if you are not whole. Mm-hmm. And by whole, I don't mean perfect, because of course we evolve through our lives. And if you're not dead, you're not done. There's always going to be some new evolution to go through. So I really laugh when I sometimes meet people that are like, well, I'm fully self-actualized and I don't need any coaching. I'm like, okay, sure.
Let's see.
And they're usually like the people that have the worst blind spots about themselves. I'm like, okay, go on.
Sure.
Go off with your bad self. That's great. But so there'll be many evolutions throughout your life. But I think if you can, so I made an acronym for it. So the whole W is for wonder. I think we don't do much without a sense of wonder.
Right.
Curiosity, a little spark about the world, a desire to grow. The second one, H, is here. Here in the moment now. What's happening now? Because we don't know what's going to happen then, and we knew what happened in the past and now. And of course, quantum physics makes a whole other mockery of all of this. But
sure,
the
string theory,
now, here, right? O is you need to be open. Open to change, open to perspectives, open. L means you need to lead yourself first before you even think about leading others. Lead. And then the last one is E, evolve. You have to be able to change and grow in order to adapt, in order to live in the new world, things like that. So that's what I mean by whole. You have to be embodying those qualities in order to be really present for the people that you're working with and the relationships that you have inside, at work, out of work. How can you be real? How can you be present? How can you be vulnerable? How can you be strong? How are you going to be in the world? And that's a decision that you get to make for yourself, if you're brave enough to do that.
Right. I think that was beautiful, first of all.
Thank you.
I mean, it was, the thing is that, like, I mean, yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. There's a thought that didn't sound convinced.
No, I love it.
What? Oh,
I love it. Because I'm like, aw.
No, well, I think I think it makes a lot of sense. Because I gave things like this different terms,
okay,
but different wording, but I much of that fits in with what I would teach as well.
Right. I love this. We're all part of the transition team. As far as
my gosh.
The world is transitioning, so we're all part of the transition team. So what I love about this is the work that you're doing, I don't have to worry about because you got it. And the work that I'm doing, you don't have to worry about because I got it. And there's so many of us doing this kind of work in different ways. In my writers group, I have a group of a beautiful 12 women in this writers group. And all of us are writing the same book, we realized, but in very different ways. Like my friend Sharon is writing about grandmother spider from her Indigenous heritage. And I have another friend who writes about hummingbirds. And I have another friend who writes about her hike that she took on the Cowichan Trail. And I have another friend who's writing about governance. And another friend who writes about meditation. And a friend who writes about core story. But we're all writing the same story. And we're all doing the same work. But we're all doing it with these beautiful different expressions that makes it so much, I feel so much relief to go, I'm not the only one. I am not alone. There are people, bright sparks all over the world doing this work. So we're not alone.
That's a great point. Yeah, no, that's a great point. That one thing that I think, and I'm talking more about my own experience, because there were three, holds up two fingers. There were three words. You know what? At that point, you just call it out and just go, no, I knew it was only two fingers.
Right.
I knew.
Yeah. It's a beautiful oops. Go with it.
It was testing.
Right.
So there were three parts of the acronym that I keyed into immediately. First of all was wonder, right? You have to be able to, you have to want to know. Open, you need to be open to change, and then evolve, you actually have to make said changes.
Yeah.
It's that E where I think we end up having trouble. But, getting the leading yourself is a problem, or is difficult. And here was going to be my point, because there's a question I was pulling out of this.
Okay.
I have seen people, maybe I've observed my own behavior, like almost all the time, where introspection ends up being almost pathological.
Oh, yeah. You could get a little too involved. You can fall down the rabbit hole.
Yes.
For sure.
Keep going. You got my question.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I think the problem is with anything taken to extreme. So introspection, you can go so far in that you can't find your way out. Yeah. And you get paralyzed. So I think anytime anyone finds themselves sliding into paralysis, that's a sign that you've gone too far in any one direction.
Okay.
So with introspection, I think if it is helping you advance in the world, like, and not advance, like go higher up the chain or whatever but go
Sure.
further on your path. If your introspection is helpful, if you are learning from the past. So for example, I have done a shit ton of work about my own past, my family history, all that stuff. And for a while, it felt like it was never going to end. Like I was just going to carry these stories forever. And I was always going to have this identity, and this was always going to be the way it was. And what I've noticed is, for me, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to drop these stories now. I think these stories are played out. I'm going to drop them, and I'm going to create some new stories. And that decision point was like, I could only reach that decision point by having gone through the grief and the loss or whatever for whatever was in the past.
Yeah.
And my family used to basically berate me for like being, oh, you can't, you're stuck in the past. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, because the past is still affecting me today.
Mm-hmm.
If the past wasn't affecting me, it wouldn't be a problem. But because the past is affecting me and I'm behaving in ways that are rooted in things that happened in the past, I need to go and root that out. And so I think if you're doing introspection for the sake of learning and moving on, fantastic. And there are people that I know who have been singing the same song for 30, 40 years and have done nothing, haven't moved an inch. And that, I think, is like, well, it's sad. And whatever, it's their path. They can have their own path. But I think you can, there is a place where you go so far into the hole that you just lose your way completely. And that's, you need good guides to help give you some guardrails around it.
Yeah.
Some loving guides that will say, okay, here you're singing the same song. You're spiraling here. What's going on?
Right.
Let's pull the thread. How you're going to get yourself out of here. I was having a dinner. I have a really beautiful, one of my dear friends is quite spiritual as well. So we get to talk a lot about divinity when we're hanging out. Super fun, and world religions and all these things. And I said to her, I'm at this point in my development right now where, you know, that story where the person is walking down the street and they fall in a hole and they're like, oh my God, it's dark. It's the hole. I don't know what to do. And they freak out and they're in the hole and they're in the dark and they don't know how to get out. And then they eventually get out of the hole and it's like super difficult, but they get out and they're like, whew, oh God, I'm out of the hole. And they go on. Well, the next day they're walking down the street and they fall in the hole again. Same. It's all horrible. Everything's awful. And then after a while, they keep falling in the hole. And then finally they're like, oh yeah, this hole, right. I can get out of this hole. And they get out of the hole. And then they're walking down the street. They're like, oh, there's that hole. I'm not going to, I'm in the hole. And then finally they see the hole and they get around the hole. And then eventually they take a different street. And I'm at the point in my development with this one thing that I'm working on where I am literally in that moment where I'm like, there's the hole, there's the hole, there's the hole. Ah! Fuck, I'm in the hole. And then I'm like, the hole. And then I get out. So the time I spend in the hole and knowing how to get out of the hole, super quick. So I think it's shortening, like I think the metric for any of these relational things is decreasing the distance between rupture and repair.
Sure.
Right. So regarding introspection, if you fall in the hole and you're in the hole for a long time, if you can decrease the time that you're in the hole by just even a minute, like any amount, this is progress. So it's fascinating to me, like where I've done all of this other work and I'm definitely taking different roads in lots of different places, but there's still some things where I'm like, damn, there's the hole. So now I'm working on training myself to see the signs and go, okay, because I love myself, I'm not going in this hole. Because I love myself, I'm not going in this hole.
Sure.
Do something different. So I'm kind of switching into this place of deep devotion. Okay, so whatever you believe, I happen to just believe there's something greater than us. I don't know what it is. It could be anything. Could be quantum physics. Sure. I don't know. Whatever. I'm here for a reason. I need to do the work to make sure that I'm clear on my purpose, and so I can move in the world and do whatever I'm supposed to do here. I've noticed that in everything that I do now, because I have a really broad emotional range, and I always have, and that's actually part of my human design. It's part of the way that I operate. I need to ride that wave of emotions in order to come to be able to put my thinking brain back online again. It just is just the way I operate. I have to go through the wave. I gather all the information from the emotional wave, and then that helps inform whatever decision I'm making. But if you imagine all of this energy in a 3-year-old body and parents who are not equipped to deal with that,
sure,
what are they going to do? They're just going to slam the door. Don't be that way. Don't, right? So I had to spend a lot of time learning that it was okay to be who I was and okay to be how I was. and then learn how to channel and work with all the things that I am. So I'm still kind of mastering those tools, like figuring it out. And I'm 53, I'll be 54 soon. So it takes time. And I think that's what people don't realize. They want everything, they want healing all at once. And it doesn't work like that. But this idea of the story, like at some point you need someone to kick your ass, but lovingly, like just lovingly go, hey baby, like, hey babe, I've noticed that you've said these things many times before, but I haven't noticed any movement. Or I hear you talking about this other person and this external situation, but I don't hear anything about you in this conversation.
Yeah.
So you bring the focus back to yourself so that we can work on you, and then you can think about whatever you're going to do out in there. But you need to go within to go without. Just can't avoid it. Can't always be outward focused. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. I like that. Because I was going to say, I think one of the biggest problems that really any of us face is exactly what you're saying, that we keep falling in the same hole.
Yeah.
And I see, now we're dumping on holes. This is just whole show about dumping on.
That's hole present. Yeah. How are you in the hole? Okay. You go
what we ought to do
about grammar and spelling. And, anyway,
what we ought to do is find ourselves a scientist and put him or her in the hole with Judith Butler.
There you go. All right.
We'd have the whole, because how's it go? Right, we're all siblings in a foxhole, something like that. There are no atheists.
We're all just God in drag is mine.
Perfect.
We're all just God in drag. Like the divinity needs to express itself, so everybody is a reflection. So all the shit you see in the world, and someone's like, "Oh, that's terrible. I would never be that." I'm like, don't be so sure. Don't be so sure that you would never be that. You have to be vigilant, right?
And that's where we have trouble, right there. Yeah. If you're able to break that, if you're able to go, okay, I'm going to even just reduce the cycle, which is funny because my psychologist has said that to me multiple times. Because nice. Yeah, because I have these. I'm not going to tell you my whole mental health history.
That's okay.
So suffice it to say that there's patterns of behavior that my psychologist at some point said, think back like 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Right.
That would be something it'd take you a whole weekend to recover. Now it's like a couple of hours.
Yes, exactly. Like whatever would have knocked you on your butt for a month now is like a week. That's progress. Whatever knocked you on your butt for a week is a day. Great. That's progress. So eventually that's the story of the martial arts master where he never seems to lose his balance. And the student was like, "Oh, master, you never lose your balance." And the master says, no, I lose my balance all the time, but I'm so good at getting it back that you don't notice. Looks like I have my balance all the time, but it's just because I've learned quick recovery.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's funny is every time I hear that, hey, it's getting better, I go, but it's not fixed.
Yeah. It's not fixed. It's fixed a little.
Yeah. No, I know. Well, But you had said what we want to do. We get into the hole and then we go, I can't believe I got in. And then it's paralysis.
Yeah. The shame doesn't really help.
No.
There's a great acronym. I forget where I heard this. My counselor, I think, told me this. The SHAME acronym should have already mastered everything. No! It's like, so the minute you feel you're like, oh, should have already mastered everything, which is, of course, completely unrealistic. And you're like, okay, I don't need to shame about this. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just learning something, And sometimes, yes, there's a moment of like, oh, you sneaky hole. You got me again. Well, you're not going to get me next. Maybe you might, but that's okay. I'm going to get out quickly.
I think that's awesome, though. I'm glad that you said that because I got to tell you, every time my psychologist said it, I was like, whatever, like, don't give me this happy crappy. Like, I don't, that doesn't help, but so it's good to hear it from, well, I mean, now it did. When you said it, I went, oh.
Okay, wait, what part what didn't help and now it helps? Tell me again, what part? What did you hear?
I didn't say I make any sense. Just no. Well, when my psychologist has said, okay, yeah, something bad happened, subjectively bad.
Yes.
she said, but at least it's getting shorter. I went, yeah, but it's not fixed.
Yeah.
What you said, what you did was put it into a process.
Yes, it's a cycle.
Yeah, right. Right. So it's a cycle. And, I'm not saying, hopefully, psychologist, if you're out there listening, I'm not dumping on you.
We love our therapists and psychologists and counselors and coaches,
right.
shamans and healers and priestesses and the whole 9 yards.
Right.
We need
but
them
that
all.
did help. Yeah. To think of it as, you walk down the same street every day, every week,
Yeah.
If you can just get out of the hole more quickly each time, that's good. So
I wonder if what you heard was a minimizing of the issue that still exists, just in that language around, well, at least it's not like it's sort of blue skying it. I personally I don't really like that when someone's like, well, at least it's not as bad as blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, but that's acting like it's not still bad. Like, it's bad, right? Yeah. So I wonder if maybe that might have maybe it felt minimizing or something. I don't know.
It did. Yes. Yes. I think that's a good way of saying it. I think it felt, I think so.
Minimize my pain.
Don't minimize my thing.
Don't minimize it. I'm still upset that it's not quite working. I'm allowed to be upset that it's not quite working.
Right.
Move on.
Right.
But if you minimize it, I'm just going to think about it 10,000 times. So please don't minimize.
Yeah. And I think this was so, but that's on me, not, that was on me, not her, I think. So, but I know, right? How self-realized is that?
Right.
I said it was me.
I love awareness. Right. I think it's great. I always am praising my clients. I'm like, I'm proud of you because you had good awareness. Like that's a good awareness. Great.
There you go.
Continue.
All right. So I'm looking at the time. I get the sense we could go on for another couple of hours because I think there's so much good stuff to talk about here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you, so just tell us, obviously there's a whole lot that we can delve into here. Can you tell everybody listening, how do we find you on the internet so that we can get more out of it or more of it?
Sure. I am easy to find because there's not very many Katherine Lazaruks in the world. And so just put my name into Instagram and I'm there, and you put my name into LinkedIn and I'm there. And those are the two places I post most often. Okay.
All right. And then I'm going to put a link to your consulting website. Did you just call it Lazaruk Consulting?
Yeah, it's lzrkconsulting.com. lzrkconsulting.com for my American friends.
Yeah. There's the freedom alphabet down here. Don't forget that.
Perfect. There you go. Yeah, you're welcome to contact me. There's a contact form on my website. You can come through if you want to do some work or you want to talk about your options in terms of how you want to show up in the world, or you have a company that you think needs a kick in the ass. Let me know.
Yeah. I'm going to stick a link to your book because I think it's just, I think it's important for us all to be able to have multiple resources. I learn best by reading, which is interesting. Cool. Because then I talk to people for a living. So how does that work?
I don't know. I'm going to recommend though, if you read it, it's not a traditional sort of business book. I think you would do well to just open it at random bits and look at pieces, or there's lots of white space. So doodling, coloring, tearing out pages. I'm highly go to town. Enjoy it. Don't necessarily feel like you have to sit down and read the book because it might drive you a bit crazy. There's some poems and there's some other bits in there. And
it sounds amazing.
Yeah. Have fun. Yeah. Have fun with it.
Definitely. All right. Well, let me go ahead and shut down this particular episode. I do want to say, Katherine, thank you so much for showing up, as I've called it before, which sounds a little bit that's a little minimizing too. It's I've got a clock. How tough was that? But
no, it's the most important thing.
Yes.
Show up.
So thank you for doing that. I will also say, thank you to our listeners. I had a funny bit. There was at one point I was talking to somebody and I said, I was trying to say people who are listening for us both, people who like what I have to say, people who like what you have to say. But the way it came out was both of our listeners.
All two of them.
Just both of you. Thanks, Mom and Grandma.
Yeah, technically because you're listening to me and I'm listening to you, so we can count that as two. So 4.
Right. So both of our listeners. So I guess, thanks to you again, Katherine. But
you're welcome.
But say thank you to all of our listeners. I am Amethyst Herrick. I've been talking to Katherine Lazaruk on Gender Identity Weekly about whole person, whole presence, and just trying not to fall in a hole as long as trying to get out of a hole more quickly every time. So thank you again, Katherine.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.